Step back into the forge, drop your fragile ego, and listen. We live in a pathetic, desperate world where people constantly beg to be seen. They aggressively overly explain, they frantically chase, and they pour their hearts out in long, pathetic paragraphs to people who have already decided not to understand them. That is absolutely not courage. That is pure weakness, pretending to be connection. A true stoic absolutely never begs for attention. When someone blatantly disrespects you, the ultimate display of power is not a loud argument. It is walking away in dead silence. Epictetus warned us, the more you chase someone's validation, the more you willingly hand over total control of your own mind. You are telling them your peace depends on their response. That is not peace, that is a mental prison. Today we are breaking down the brutal superpower of stoic silence, the exact kind of silence that terrifies manipulators and makes your total absence speak infinitely louder than any desperate message you could ever send. We have rewired the 6 iron truths. Stay with me. Point 1. The illusion of words. Truth number 1. Silence brutally exposes what words try to hide. When you go dead silent, the masks fall off. Words are incredibly cheap and dangerously deceptive. People will say exactly what they think you want to hear. They use pathetic excuses and empty apologies to keep you on the hook. But dead silence cannot lie. Emerson wrote, "What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say. Action is the only language that matters." The Stoics never judged a person by their theatrical apologies. They judged them by cold, undeniable patterns, and the absolute best way to expose a pattern is to shut your mouth and watch. Silence is not passive, it is highly observant. When you stop violently explaining yourself, you give people the empty space to reveal their true nature. The one who truly respects you will reach out with raw honesty. The parasite who only used you will instantly vanish because they never actually valued you. The manipulator will grow furious, not because you did something wrong, but because they violently lost control over you. Here is the harsh reality weak people refuse to see. Words create a comfortable illusion. Silence reveals brutal reality. You do not need to confront them. You do not need to lay a complex trap to test their loyalty. Just withdraw your words and watch. See who disappears when you stop giving entirely. See who gets deeply frustrated when they can no longer provoke an emotional reaction out of you. Sometimes, your dead silence hits harder than 1,000 screaming confrontations. People can argue with your opinions, but they cannot argue with your absolute absence. When you stay quiet, you stop playing their pathetic emotional games. Trust cold patterns over empty promises. You start believing raw energy over pathetic explanations. That is true stoicism. It is not cold, it is lethal discernment. The next time someone tries to talk their way back into your life, do not rush to respond. Stop desperately analyzing their pathetic lies. Silence the only scanner you need. But what happens when you crave that final conversation? Welcome to truth number 2. Point 2. The trap of closure. Truth number 2. Begging for closure is the ultimate form of self-betrayal. Let us talk about a harsh reality most weak people refuse to admit. Begging for closure absolutely never ends in peace. It ends in more humiliation. We all crave that one final, honest conversation. But here is the brutal truth. If they actually respected you, you would never have to beg for it. If they do not give it to you voluntarily, your dead silence is the closure. Epictetus commanded, "Do not explain your philosophy, embody it. You are the final judge." When you stop desperately chasing closure and start actually embodying your iron values, you strip them of the power to validate your pain. Needing someone who just destroyed you to explain why they did it, that is you handing them total control over your own healing. Look at the pathetic cycle. They hurt you. You desperately demand answers. They respond with cold arrogance or total avoidance. You feel completely worthless. The cycle violently repeats until you wake up to one cold fact. Closure is absolutely not something they hand you. It is something you forge for yourself. You convince your fragile ego, if I just explain my side, if I just get that one last talk. No, here is exactly what happens. You end up pouring your heart out to someone who has already made total peace with hurting you. You waste your finite energy hoping a traitor will magically fix your broken expectations. That is not closure. That is pathetic self-abandonment. Chasing them so they finally understand you is a massive betrayal of your own growth. Real stoic closure is this: you coldly accept that no amount of desperate explanation will ever make them loyal. You aggressively stop waiting for an apology that will absolutely never come. The cowards who ghosted you do not get a second chance. Stop rehearsing the perfect message in your head. Stop bleeding for ghosts. Your absolute silence is their final answer. Go completely silent and let your true self-respect breathe again. Do not wait for their permission to heal. Do not give them that power. Closure is yours to take. Take it back in silence. But what is the true weight of your absence? Welcome to truth number 3. Point 3. The echo of absence. Truth number 3. Silence makes them severely feel your absence, not just hear your weak words. Have you ever noticed the brutal paradox of human nature? When you stop violently explaining yourself, people suddenly start thinking. Think about the last time you were casually discarded or blatantly disrespected. Your fragile ego probably screamed at you to desperately fight back, to aggressively defend your worth through a pathetic screen. But here is the cold, hard reality. The more you talk, the less they listen. The more you desperately chase, the faster they run. When you over-explain, you completely devalue your own existence. But when you go absolutely silent, they notice your absence infinitely more than they ever respected your presence. Elbert Hubbard wrote, "He who does not understand your silence will probably not understand your words." The message is clear. The Stoics weaponized this thousands of years ago. Why? Because dead silence makes people incredibly uncomfortable in a way that emotional noise never can. When you go completely silent on someone who fully expected you to beg, you force them to look into a mirror. You force them to confront their own toxic actions without you saying a single word. Your silence explicitly says, "I saw exactly what you did. I felt exactly how you treated me. But I value my own soul entirely too much to explain it to you." This kind of silence does not come from a bruised ego. It comes from lethal clarity. You suddenly realize, if they actually respected you, they would reach out. If they were emotionally mature, they would absolutely not need a desperate paragraph to understand your worth. So you stay silent. And in that terrifying stillness, you aggressively reclaim every ounce of power you once gave away. Yes, your silence will deeply trigger them. It will utterly confuse them. It will make them frantically wonder why you are not reacting. That is the exact moment the power dynamically shifts. Because your silence communicates one brutal truth they cannot possibly ignore. You do not owe them an explanation, not anymore. Their disrespect was loud. Make your departure absolutely deafening. Your absence suffocate them. But how do you forge this ultimate, unshakable confidence? Welcome to truth number 4. Point 4. The ultimate confidence. Truth number 4. Not explaining yourself is the absolute highest form of confidence. Let us be brutally honest for a second. When someone grossly misunderstands you, your fragile ego instantly wants to frantically defend itself. You desperately want to explain exactly why you are not what they think you are. But a true Stoic absolutely never chases understanding from the masses. He exclusively seeks understanding within himself. Why? Because frantically explaining yourself to people who have already made up their minds is not confidence. It is the pathetic fear of being misjudged. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors." unless with a view to some mutual benefit. Your energy is not for their entertainment. Think about that cold truth. Every single time you aggressively try to convince someone of your supreme worth, your absolute goodness, or your unwavering loyalty, you are actively spending your heavily limited time and energy on a coward's judgment. That is absolutely not power. That is massive insecurity. The man who stubbornly refuses to explain himself is not arrogant. He is untouchable. He operates in total peace because he knows his intentions are entirely clean, his actions are perfectly aligned, and his supreme value absolutely never needs to be translated to those who do not care to understand it. This extreme level of cold detachment is not easy. You will be immediately called cold. You will be angrily labeled selfish. You might even lose people who once felt close to you. But understand this brutal reality. Losing weak people who never truly saw your worth is absolutely not a loss. It is a lethal alignment. Most weak people do not actually want to deeply understand you. They just want to aggressively control exactly how you are perceived. And when your dead silence violently breaks their comfortable illusion, they get deeply angry because you violently stopped playing their game. You absolutely do not ever owe anyone a pathetic explanation for fiercely choosing to protect your own absolute peace of mind. Silence, your supreme crown. But how does this silence force you to face your own demons? Welcome back to truth number 5. Point 5. The inner truth. Truth number 5. When you stay completely silent, you hear the brutal truth infinitely louder. The modern world is constantly screaming, but dead silence brutally forces you to actually listen, not to the chaotic noise of others, but to your own hidden reality. In moments of severe heartbreak, bitter betrayal, or massive confusion, weak people immediately run to the crowd for a temporary emotional fix. They frantically scroll through endless social media feeds, desperately call 5 different friends, or even aggressively confront the exact person who deeply hurt them. They foolishly hope the right conversation will magically heal the wrong person. But the true Stoic does something radically different. He goes absolutely dead silent. Not because he does not feel the intense pain, but because he intrinsically knows that real permanent answers absolutely never come from outside noise. They only come from aggressive internal reflection. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. You hold the absolute override key. When you get ruthlessly silent, your chaotic mind finally calms down. And when the mind calms down, the uncomfortable truth forcefully rises to the surface. You suddenly begin to clearly hear things your fragile ego tried to violently suppress. Things like, they never actually respected me, I just desperately refused to accept it. Or, I am not genuinely angry because they left, I am furious because I stayed entirely too long. These lethal truths absolutely do not arrive in a pathetic text message. They arrive in the quiet, isolated hours when you aggressively stop explaining yourself and finally start ruthlessly listening. Silence provides the critical space to surgically separate your turbulent emotions from your iron values. When you are deeply hurt, your raw emotions scream at you to desperately chase them, frantically explain yourself, and aggressively prove your worth. But when you are completely silent, your iron values whisper a different command. They tell you to hold your supreme dignity, fiercely protect your absolute peace, and coldly let them go. Society conditions you to aggressively speak your mind. The ultimate answer is forged inside. Stop looking for validation. Your silence is your sanctuary. But how does this internal sanctuary become your most lethal weapon? Welcome to truth number 6. Point 6. The lethal detachment. Truth number 6. Your brutal detachment in silence is the absolute ultimate lesson. There is something uniquely terrifying about a person who chooses to walk away Not in pathetic anger, not in dramatic rage, but in cold, untouchable detachment. You do not passionately slam the door. You do not send a desperate final message. You simply vanish. And in that deafening silence, you teach a lethal lesson no words could. Seneca stated, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Let their minds punish them." When you abruptly stop responding, you completely abandon them to their own toxic imagination. They are left entirely alone with their crippling guilt, the bitter memory of their blatant disrespect, and the terrifying echo of your absolute absence. Weak people fully expect you to desperately chase them. They are completely used to fragile victims who aggressively react, violently beg, and break down just to be heard. But when you go completely silent, you forcefully exit their pathetic emotional game with iron dignity. You surgically strip away their perceived power and violently force them to brutally confront themselves. That terrifies them infinitely more than any screaming argument ever could, because they suddenly realize they no longer have any access to your vital energy. People absolutely do not learn from weak words. They learn from cold distance. They do not magically change when you frantically scream at them to respect you. They change when your absence forces them to realize what they lost. You finally learned that you must strictly stop bleeding in front of parasites who are completely incapable of understanding your pain. You must ruthlessly stop explaining violent storms to weak people who have lived their entire lives indoors. Detachment does not mean you do not care. It means you care entirely too much about your own soul to keep it locked in a space where it is being aggressively neglected. You absolutely never need to loudly announce your departure to the cowards. Let them drown in the silence. If this truth awakened the warrior inside you, it is time for the final shift. If you have made it this far, you already feel it. There is a profound shift happening inside you. You finally realize you absolutely never have to desperately chase, beg, or explain yourself to be worthy. You do not have to be violently loud to be heard. You do not have to break your own peace just to keep weak people comfortable. The Stoics taught us something incredibly powerful. Silence is never a weakness, it is supreme control. Every single time you choose not to react, you aggressively build inner peace. Every time you walk away quietly, you forge unshakable self-worth. Every time you keep your iron dignity intact, you build the kind of absolute power that cannot ever be stolen. Let your silence be your final word, not out of fragile ego, but out of deep, unshakable self-respect. This path is absolutely not for the weak. You must protect your energy, never explain your peace. If this brutal truth hit your heart, smash the like button right now. Share this with someone who desperately needs to hear it. Subscribe to the Ataraxia Forge for more Stoic truth. Drop this exact affirmation in the comments. My silence is my last word and my most powerful one. Your voice heavily matters here today. Choose absolute discipline. Choose the harder path. Click the video on your screen. See you inside the forge.